Hi there, I'm BGK, and today I wanted to discuss some Unity fundamentals that I find a lot of beginner game devs struggle with, and that is scene context and references. So when you look at a Unity project, when you're opening it up, you have your project window here, and think of this context here is all of your assets. It's your textures, it's your animations, your scriptable objects, your prefabs, and your scenes. Now, these assets, this scene asset, let's say, it is just a YAML file, essentially. It is just a list of all the different items and, what internal references they have, all the mono behaviors, every game object, and their positioning, things like that. Now, our scene here and our hierarchy, this is when we're in edit mode, it is literally just a visual representation of that file. It is not an instance runtime version of it. So when I press play in Unity, we take this scene file, which is again just a text file, and then we turn it into a runtime context. And now this context becomes, our hierarchy with everything that we see that the user interacts with. So when I press play here, this is not obviously what was in that file. This is now its new own instance of the scene. So now let's think about this for a second. If I've got a secondary scene and I want to drag a reference from one into the other, I try and grab this cube and put it into this game object reference. That's not really going to work because this secondary scene doesn't really exist in the game world yet. It's just showing us what is in the secondary scene Unity file. That's it. And so the only way that we can get a reference to it is once it's already been created in the runtime. And now, I think a really easy way to think about that would be, let's say I could make the reference to it. Say I drag this cube into the example behavior reference game object. What would happen if I loaded this scene a bunch of times? See what I've done here now is I now have the secondary scene loaded 5 times. So, but I still only have the one example behavior. So if I had done that, which one would it reference? And the obvious answer is, well, it doesn't know. And so now we have 5 different cubes, and I can move them about because they're all overlapped. But yeah, that obviously couldn't be possible. And so when we're looking at and thinking about our context here, we can have our scene, once it's be created, reference things outside, into the larger context, from this little box into the bigger project box. But we can't have things reference inside of it from the project going further down because it doesn't exist. And the same is true for prefabs. So a prefab is essentially a file, the exact same thing, and at runtime, it gets turned into a bunch of little game objects, little runtime game objects. And each one of these have their own little context. but they're actually inside of, sorry, this should have been inside of the scene. So they're further inside. And so they can reference outwards, or outwards even further. But it's kind of a one-way direction there. And so if there's another scene, kind of getting a little squished here, this next scene has its own context over here. And so there's no way for these two scenes to communicate until runtime exists, because these two files are just some static files. So I hope that helped just kind of give yourself a way to visualize or conceptualize how the runtime scenes and references are working. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections, just feel free to leave a comment. Thanks so much. Have a good one.